You've probably heard that eggs are not the healthiest food because they have too much cholesterol. Therefore, you'll develop heart disease. However, if you watch YouTube, plenty of people say just the opposite thing, that eggs are healthy for your heart.
Now, the egg is really considered a perfect food, not just a perfect protein.
Eggs are known to be the #1 superfood.
Human beings have eaten the eggs of birds, including chickens. You better have some good research if you're going to tell me that eggs are suddenly bad.
The question is, do eggs cause these three things? And the answer is no, they don't.
My opinion, the yolk is definitely a go.
So, who is right? The academics or the YouTubers? We dug a little bit deeper. Here's what we found out. So, welcome. Today, if you haven't guessed it, we're talking about eggs and the shocking truth about eggs and heart disease. I'm going to go ahead and give away a few things, but there's a lot more. In fact, there's 19 things that we found as we started digging deeper. And these 19 things you're not going to find on other YouTube channels. But I'm going to give you a couple of spoilers. The first one is, no, eggs do not cause heart disease. Not even the yellow part, the yolk, the cholesterol part. They don't do it. Number 2, eggs don't raise your total cholesterol. Number 3, eggs don't decrease your good cholesterol, your HDL. Another one, in fact, they raise HDL. And another one, cage-free eggs really are a lot better for you. They are. Now, let's get into the rest of the facts that you're just not going to find on YouTube. Jesus?
Hey, everybody. It's very nice to be back after the success we have had on recent videos. Thank you so much for your support. And as Dr. Brewer mentioned, we went a little bit deeper into the science, especially on the latest evidence, to find out what else is there. And just to help Dr. Brewer answer the question on the intro, I think both academics and YouTubers are right. Just it depends on what specific point. I even saw a couple of Harvard articles and Mayo Clinic articles going back to say it's not saturated fats and the eggs are a good thing to do. But all, as usual, they're going to say in moderation, of course. So let's go dive into the evidence real quick. We're trying to simplify this. I read those articles so you don't have to. And thank you, Aspen, helping us setting this up, because I fail miserably whenever I try to adjust the image. So this is the first article we found. This is from last year, our review of multiple research. And I'm going to put you there the conclusions of this review. And I'm going to ask Dr. Brewer for his opinion. Number 1, eggs increase muscle, decrease fat, and this might sound like obvious, that it avoids muscle mass loss. So with eggs, you will actually have better chances to build more muscle and burn fat instead. I'm going to go through the ones that I found this article, and then we go to Dr. Brewer. Number 2, eggs don't increase risk. And actually, eggs can decrease cardiovascular risk. And in other articles, I'm going to show you how many eggs you need to eat to get this benefit. Number 3, eggs don't cause diabetes. They actually can decrease insulin resistance. They can decrease fasting glucose, A1C, and HOMA-IR, which is what they use on the research. So another point for eggs. And number 4, eggs can decrease hunger because they decrease the impact and the function of ghrelin on the bloodstream, according to multiple research. Dr. Brewer, wanna give your opinion on this one? The first 4 points?
Yeah, 1 through 3, I'm clearly a big believer in. I think eggs are really good for you. I haven't seen the literature quite so much on the ghrelin thing. That is very interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, actually, if I can go a little bit, this review, even though it's not a meta-analysis, which will be the best option, they included observational studies, they included randomized control trials, and I wanted to bring this point real quick before we continue. Observational studies look at populations, so the advantage is you can investigate on a lot of people, hundreds of thousands of people, but the catch is it's harder to make a point that something is causing something. It's hard to make the point that this is causing this. And a lot of these findings come from randomized control trials where you can have better chances to say this causes this, but it's a smaller samples of people. But still, I think the evidence is strong enough to do this claim, to make these claims.
So
Next,
let me try to translate.
Oh yeah, please do.
And this is not Spanish to English. This is more epidemiologist to the public world. So I think what you're saying is this. It's a little bit difficult to look at a specific item like what you just mentioned, eggs and this topic, because you're just not going to see that many specific randomized clinical trials on it. If you don't, then the meta-analysis is going to struggle to create that specific connection. On the other hand, so then you end up depending more on not meta-analyses, which is like the biggest thing we'd want to have, but on randomized clinical trials. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I'm also making the point that population studies have the advantage that they can study more people compared to randomized control trials that study less people. But on a randomized control trial, it's more controlled. So the results are more reliable.
So bottom line is both population studies as well as meta-analyses have a lot more power than a single individual randomized clinical trial. However, the population studies don't have the control, so they miss out on some of the things there. And the meta-analyses don't have the number of randomized clinical trials. When you're looking at eggs and ghrelin, that's a very niche, thin item.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll probably beat that up enough.
Let's go to the next points. And but it's important because it's an introduction to the next points. This is another review. There are like two groups of researchers said, we're going to study X, and some of them published on May and the other ones published on June last year. In this review, first thing, and we were talking about this right now, point number 7, only observational studies suggest increase on cardiovascular risk, but there is no linear dose response. Let me translate that for you. So it has to do with what we just mentioned. Population studies and observational studies where you're just watching data from people. You're not controlling the data. That's the data that is available. You're not generating that. You might be able to measure tons of people, but it's going to be impossible to say, based on that evidence, that this is causing this, that eggs are causing heart disease, because there are multiple risk factors around those people that you're not able to control. And when you see a no linear dose response, meaning more eggs cause more heart disease, that's not what's going on. So when you don't have the dose response, you cannot say that A is causing B. Do you want to translate that, Dr. Brewer?
Yeah, I actually found myself thinking of an example. But when I give this example, there's going to be a lot of people throwing rotten eggs at me.
Well, your examples confuse me more than what they help. So let's keep moving.
Okay, I won't give that example then.
Number 8, eating one egg a day decreases the risk of stroke. Now, just take this with a pinch of salt because the decrease is moderate. It's based on one study only. But that's a good point, and I think it makes sense. Number 9, egg consumption in Asia is related to better lifestyle. It's the opposite on the US. And let me tell you what they define as lifestyles. You will agree with some stuff, you will not agree with some stuff. Good lifestyle, according to the authors: increased physical activity, no smoking, and the third point, not eating saturated fats.
Oh,
That's what.
Talk about throwing rotten eggs. They're going to get a lot for that, aren't they?
Well, that's what the study said. I think there's some truth to that. I don't necessarily agree with the saturated fats 100%, but it's also clear that if you don't have a healthy lifestyle and you're relying on eggs to decrease your cardiovascular risk, there's definitely something missing.
I have to say this to maybe save us from getting a lot of rotten eggs. I agree with I think that there is no damage associated with saturated fats, just from what I've seen in the literature. And I realize this is a little bit of a digression, but again, it's, I think, a little bit of an interpretation. Saturated fats were such a bugaboo for such a long time. Everybody thought saturated fats were bad. So the only people that ate saturated fats were people that ignored all the other health activities, like cigarettes and exercise and maintaining a good weight. So it actually maybe become more of an indicator, a signal of somebody who's not got a poor lifestyle, rather than something that's actually causing damage.
So you're saying that eggs, kind of like red meat, became a scapegoats for this.
Yep. And an indicator of somebody that wanted to ignore their lifestyle rather than something that was actually doing any biological damage.
Oh, yeah. And that happens with any food. We posted a video about top 7 foods, and you can eat all those 7 foods, but if you're not doing lifestyle changes, I don't know if that's really going to help.
Yeah.
Next study. I really like this one. This is a more specific study. This is a cohort study. So it's still observational, though. So take that as it is. It's the Attica study. This is what they found out. Number 10, eating 4 to 7 eggs per week can decrease the risk up to 75%, but only if you're on a plant-based diet.
Oh,
that's what they're saying. I'm not saying that.
That's interesting. That's a point for the carnivores, isn't it?
Well, I think this strikes both ways. If you are plant-based and avoiding eggs, you are missing out. And if you're only eating eggs and eating carnivore alone, well, I'm just saying there's one paper that says that eggs have better benefit if you're including plants. I'm just quoting the research. Don't beat the messenger.
And on a serious note, what that I think makes most of us assume or think is this: maybe there is something in an animal diet that eggs also provide. And if you're not getting any other animal diet components, if you're eating other animal products, then you don't need what's in the egg as much. But if you're not eating any other animal products, maybe there's something in that egg that you really needed.
Definitely.
Am I overstating the obvious?
You're preaching to the choir, but that's okay. Sometimes that's needed. So let me tell you one more thing about these research papers. I'm pretty confident that most of these papers are not necessarily supporting carnivore diet because of saturated fats. They still think saturated fats is a bad thing. And even with that kind of perspective, they're showing benefits of eggs. That's what I wanted to kind of emphasize here.
So in other words, even though most of the authors are carrying most of the authors of the articles are carrying a filter that saturated fats are bad, they're still finding eggs are good. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Exactly right. So number 11, eating 1 to 3 eggs a week has the same effect if there is a diet with more saturated fat from other sources. So what they were saying is, if you want to reach the 75% risk reduction, you need to eat 4 to 7 eggs if you are on a plant-based diet. If you're on a different diet, let's say carnivore diet, the sweet spot is 1 to 3 eggs a week, plus your other protein sources.
Is that an even stronger statement, almost a dose response curve, saying that, yeah, saying that there's something in an animal?
I'm glad you catch that immediately.
Yeah, that, well, you know, I did do a little bit of this long ago. But basically, what you're saying is and for those who are not getting the point, a dose response curve is a very, very strong statement of perhaps causality, but at least an association. And the point here is, you put these last 2 points together, and again, it makes an even stronger statement that there's something in an animal diet that is probably helpful. Yep. Even for authors carrying a filter, scientists carrying a filter that saturated fats are bad. Even
Exactly.
they're admitting this.
Exactly right. And I think they also relying on moderation. Number 12, eating less than 1 egg a week increases the risk of obesity, high blood pressure, and cholesterol. So this is a very interesting finding. Also, it has to do with the macronutrients and all the other components, not just the lipid profile of the eggs. And look at this last point. Increasing consumption of eggs of 1 week a week, like for each additional egg that you eat on a week, you can decrease your cardiovascular risk up to 45% within a decade. Because I forgot to mention this. This study was following people for 10 years. So even though it's a cohort study, they didn't necessarily do something. They tried to do some statistics to change the impact from different factors. This is what they found. This is what they came up with. 7 eggs per week. That's the sweet spot. 1 egg a week. And if you're just eating 1 egg or 2 eggs, each additional egg will increase your benefit.
So you got up to 45% with the 7 eggs per week, or 1 per day?
Exactly right.
Very interesting.
And before we continue, I want to do an open invite. Gilbert, can you show that graph that I mentioned? Of course, I'm going to do the classic, click the like button, subscribe, share, all of that stuff. Recently, I'm leaning more onto keep watching our videos. That supports the channel. And the next part, if you are fed up with the cardiovascular prevention care that you're getting, give us a call, 859-721-1414, or visit breadmanhealth.com. We have a team trained by Dr. Brewer that will be able to help you out. That's it for advertisement. Let's go to, that's our sponsor for today, PrevMed, just so you know. So April 2024. This is a study where they compared fatty acid profile in egg yolk on late-age hens on free-range versus caged chicken. So is it real? Is it a reality that free-range eggs or free-range chicken that lay eggs, those eggs are better than the ones that are from caged chicken? This is what they found out. Point number 14. Old chickens lay good eggs.
Let's hear it for old people.
And then the other point that I got from this article, eggs from free-range chickens have a better lipid profile. Now, this is where it gets interesting.
How they define better profile.
Better lipid profile for them was more polyunsaturated fatty acids and less saturated fatty acids. And let me tell you which fatty acids they found. They found linoleic acid, DHA, EPA. And another sixth chain poof. I don't remember the name right now. I put it down here. Even the chemistry names are hard for me. Docosahexaenoic acid. That's DHA. Linoleic
DHA.
acid. Yeah. A DPA. That's the other one. Docosahexaenoic acid. DPA. So the thing here is similar to the omega-3 over the omega-3 and omega-6 omega-3 ratio, which is supposed to be 4:1 or less. Meaning, if you eat a lot of the bond on the number 6 chain, or omega-6 fatty acids, if you want to see that it's simpler. If you eat a lot of omega-6 compared to omega-3s, that's not healthy. But what they did watch on this is even though there are some omega-6s on the eggs, the ratio was lower than 4:1, meaning it has way more omega-3 fatty acids. That's the whole point. So free-range eggs have a lot of omega-3 fatty acids.
So
I butchered that. Yeah.
So
Go ahead. Help
I've
me
got
out.
a question. UN, are you listening? UN has a question about he or she heard that all eggs except for pasture raised has an omega-6 to 3 ratio of 23:1. Please expound. And I think you just did. I think you said, look, they need to be grass fed.
Oh yeah.
Not grass. They
use multiple things. That's actually the point of the article.
Grain, but bugs.
Exactly right. You did the exact right observation. Free range, they're eating way more than just grass.
Yeah.
And eating bugs that are very high on protein also helps. And of course, it seems obvious. It's better than just eating all that grain products that caged chicken eat. So I just wanted to make the point because a lot of people are thinking that polyunsaturated fats are bad, but it has to do with the ratio. If you have a lot of omega-3s compared to omega-6s, that's still a good thing to do. And there's still that part. A lot of people know this. The color of the yolk is different from free range to caged chicken. And I think I saw Dr. Berg on one of those videos saying that they're putting colorants on those chickens. I don't know if that's a fact. I haven't done due diligence on that. But if you know where your eggs are coming from and those are free range, that's probably a better option. That's the bottom line.
Very true.
Okay, let's keep moving. This is a little bit older, but this is the most recent evidence that I found regarding how to cook an egg. And the way they did this was very interesting because they were not able to test this on humans itself. What they did was to use in vitro on the lab all the substances that are on the stomach and the intestine, the acids and all the proteins and enzymes that come from elder population, and test how all those chemicals react to eggs prepared in a different way. So it's not an in vivo, in-person study. This is a lab study. Take a look at the results. Number 16. In elderly, which is where all these chemicals came from, hard-boiled eggs improve protein digestibility because the enzymes are able to break apart all the protein and turn that into amino acids to be absorbed better. That's for hard-boiled eggs. If you do poached eggs, those also can improve the protein and lipid digestion because they mixture really good with all these enzymatic and fluids from the gut to be digested. So it doesn't have to break the protein. It can just go inside easily. Number 18, poached and omelette can improve vitamin D3 absorption. And omelette version is the best option to improve vitamin A absorption. So there's a caveat. There's just not one way to cook them. It depends on what you want to achieve. Any remarks based on this, Dr. Brewer, that you have?
No, I'm looking at that thinking I'd probably like omelets, which I like anyway.
Oh yeah, I like omelets too, but I'm starting to do some hard-boiled eggs too as well. Poached eggs, I'm not a big fan though.
Me either.
All right, so that's what we have for eggs and cardiovascular risk, recent videos, Dr. Brewer knows this. I've been very emotional with the last videos because I have done the number one mistake that you shouldn't do on YouTube, which is oversee the comment section. And we have a lot of people that are saying, "Oh, this doctor just doesn't get to the point on the latest videos. Just tell us what you want." And I think that's just the dopamine addiction, wanting to know the answer right away. So we are feeding a little bit on that dopamine addiction, but we also want to give you information that you can use. We're trying to adjust ourselves from the just very geeky technical things, and then you decide to, this is a practical tip that you need to decide you want to do, and it's always based on evidence, and the research will be on the description if you want to read on it. Any closing remarks on X, Dr. Brewer?
Not on eggs, but what you just said. You know, the original focus of the YouTube, and we haven't changed that. Maybe it's because we're slow, maybe it's because we're stodgy, but maybe it's because we feel very strongly about it. And that is, you see so much trash on YouTube. You see folks spouting what will make them more money, spouting what they think sounds right, spouting a bunch of other things as true facts. And the reality is facts are based on evidence. And I think the public deserves to get the real evidence. So that's what we're doing. Now, one of the things we found early on is the real evidence can sound kind of dry and dull and boring. So what we're trying to do now is not so much ask the questions that we think are interesting, because those can be dry and dull and boring, but focus on the questions that the public's asking, and then try to bring the good evidence to that. Speaking of good evidence, there's really, really good evidence that eggs are good for you. And pasture-raised, bug-fed chickens, even older ones, give you a really good
point for aging right there.
There you go.
All right, so let's go to our now traditional Q&A section. Gilbert? I think Gilbert missed the memo that I wanted to make that shorter. We can do it next time. Shout out to Christine, who just became a YouTube member. Remember, if you want to get your questions answered first, become a YouTube member, because the answer Nats is right here. You can see right there, no answer for you if you are familiar with the show Seinfeld. No soup for you, no answer for you if not a YouTube member. We're gonna do our best, but I try to organize and make sure to answer as much as possible, and we have limited time. So you will have an icon next to your name. Yeah.
And as usual, I'm already answering by answering in writing a few of these non-members. I'm doing the best I can.
Always doing that instead of focusing on the show.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Keith Lawson, good morning from Arizona. Good morning, Keith. So the egg is multivitamin. Yeah, I mean, we didn't go deep into the vitamins and the components on the egg. You can see that elsewhere. You can talk about choline and carotenoids and lutein and astaxanthin. Can you pronounce that for me? Astaxanthin. I'm sorry, it's hard in Spanish. It's even harder in English. But at the end, are pigments that are related to many benefits from eggs. That's what we're saying. It's not just cholesterol. And Anthony Garcia, good morning, Dr. Brewer. Quite a compliment. Quite a compliment.
Good morning to you too, Anthony.
And Richard Militello, good morning from Northern Arizona. Tech ADSR. True, for well-designed RCTs, randomized controlled trials can be designed to show whatever the funding source wants. That's truth, but I can tell you this research that I found, at least from what I saw, I don't think that was funded by anyone, like anyone with with those necessary perspectives. But the description will find the links. If I'm wrong, let me know.
And I will guarantee that the chickens didn't fund it.
Oh no. Well, of course, the egg industry might have some
May have.
some interest in there. Chris Linky, my blood sugar is normally slightly elevated in the morning, usually 120 to 140, sometimes higher. Let me see if this is a continuation. Recently at the gym, I started feeling weird, lightheaded, kind of foggy feeling. Blood sugar was 66. Never been that low before. I am not on no diabetic meds, but do supplements, been low carb. And it's more. Doing low carb for 4 years, getting too low, something to worry about on a low carb diet. So basically the question is, should you be worried about low glucose levels in the morning on a low carb diet if you're starting to feel some symptoms?
Yeah, you just want to avoid the symptoms. It's actually a good thing when you start to hit some of these lower levels, especially if you're wearing a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, and especially if you're seeing those lower levels, 60s and even 50s between midnight and 6 a.m. Now, the thing that you want to avoid is symptoms. So you might want to slow, if you're having symptoms that are dangerous. For example, when I started getting fat adapted, a couple of times I was out riding bicycles on the road and started getting a little bit hypoglycemic. I started carrying something in my pocket, like a cheese stick or something like that, to help slow down those symptoms. Because you don't want to wreck your bike in front of a car or run into a car. You don't want to run your car into something because you're having a hypoglycemic episode.
You're exactly right. And it also, I think there's a role on insulin on that. There's some circadian rhythms involved. And I wanted to show you something, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to. Let me give it a shot. Bear with me for 1 minute.
Oh yeah, that looks like your CGM. Pull it back about a foot. Yeah, it's at 96. There you go. That's better.
But
Okay.
do you see that red line right there?
I do, where you dipped below your you dipped below your parameters.
That was 68 in the morning. And those spikes that you see there, one of those was after tuna with some corn that I wanted to test.
Corn.
And a banana.
Oh.
The second spike was one banana. It went to 160. So
yep.
What I wanted to say with that is, and probably you didn't catch that in the morning, but my glucose went to from 68 to something closer to 90 after I exercised in the morning a little bit. But that's the point. It's kind of usual to have low levels of glucose when you are fat adapted, but it's not the best thing to have symptoms. So you can prepare for that, especially if you're. I mean, you probably have been low carb for years. There's more to see on that. Anthony Garcia, cage-free organic pasture-raised eggs are perfect food. I have seen that ratio as low as 1.1 omega-3, omega-6, omega-3 ratio. Yes, I think the evidence supports that.
Thank you very much, Anthony. And you see in that picture, he's sitting in the cockpit of a very big airplane.
Let me see. I'm trying to get some glasses that don't reflect the lighting, so I don't see good. All right. Yeah, he is. Well, it's evident that he's a pilot. Now, Joey T, if cholesterol is not a problem, then how does eating no sugar bacon compared to eggs? Does eating bacon increase cardiovascular risk? Dr. Brewer, you might want to tackle this one. I'm going to say one thing that I did, that I changed. I used to get some bacon from the supermarket that was supposedly organic, very low carb, which should have raised the alarms at the moment. Cook it, get some of that oil, and use that to cook my eggs. Stop that, because I haven't found a good source from bacon. So I think the only problem with bacon will be if it is just too processed. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, you do see some processing with nitrites, and the nitrites is a little bit of a problem. But I'm going to put the nitrites issue aside for a second and basically talk about the saturated fats. So Joey T, the question for eggs are cholesterol and some ADMA and a couple of other things. But the real question, the real comparison here is eggs and cholesterol and bacon and saturated fat. And we mentioned saturated fat a couple of times already in the show. Saturated fat used to have a very bad reputation, just like cholesterol had. It took decades for people to recognize, yeah, you may find cholesterol in the arteries of the wall for people that have plaque, but eating cholesterol doesn't create that. Now you're having to go through that same process in the science and the evidence with saturated fat. Yeah, saturated fat may, on our bodies, may cause us problems, body fat, but saturated fat in the diet may not be as problematic as everybody used to think. In fact, there have been a couple of really good meta-analyses that came out. And they were published in the in JACC, Journal of the American College of Cardiology, and a couple of other places. I personally think the evidence is going to end up going in that direction and show that saturated fat does not cause health problems.
Thank you, Dr. Burr. Chris Link, I think he's asking about the blood glucose. How low is too low?
Well, it's, again, Chris, it's not quite so much how low is too low. I've woken up at 2 or 3 in the morning a few times with blood sugars by the CGM, at least in the 50s, and felt just fine. So don't do what some of our patients have done, and that is, oh my gosh, my blood sugar's 50. I'm going to go eat a bunch of Oreos. That's
unless you want to decrease your LDL.
Yeah.
If you're a lean mass hyperresponder.
If you're a lean mass hyperresponder. But again, it's not so much avoiding those numbers. I'd get nervous 50 and below for sure. But it's really not so much a number as it is symptoms. You want to avoid hypoglycemic symptoms.
Yeah. What do you suggest to eat on those cases? Because you and I have come a long way onto deciding, maybe you want to have some breakfast. And if you're doing intermittent fasting, put your window of fasting on the late evening.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you suggest as to have for breakfast if you're feeling symptoms that your blood glucose is too low? Because in Mexico, I can tell you, the first thing they will do is to go grab a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
But that's not what you want to do.
And that's the typical thing that you hear when people say, oh, your blood sugar's low, take some sugar. Well, taking sugar is just going to put you on a roller coaster. It's going to go way up real fast and then way back down again. No, if you want to get some sugars, I would get more of a slow acting starch with a lot of fiber in it. As I mentioned before, I tended to carry cheese, something like a cheese with me because it had both fat and a protein in it.
And fructose haters are not going to agree with me. And believe me, I'm the first one on beat up on apples. But I'll even eat an apple on my case because I have tested that an apple will not spike my blood sugar that hard. I definitely, based on my experience yesterday, I won't eat a banana. So both are sugar sources. The fiber on those is different. And of course, you don't want to eat that much fructose either. But if you're feeling symptoms, also, you might want to find out if there's anything else. If this is because of the blood glucose or there's another vitamin deficiency going around. Anthony Garcia sharing with us, he likes the eggs over easy. How is that? Is that for the eggs? Well, I'm assuming.
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
So it's sort of like frying an egg, except you. I'm not a chef. Don't let me go there. I'll mess that up.
And Anthony Garcia is asking about eating raw eggs. The problem with raw eggs is not so much the nutrition, because the evidence shows that you can get the same nutritional value. The problem is the infection, salmonella and other stuff. So you want to cook them. You want to cook them either if those are poached, over easy, omelette, or hard boiled, because the nutrition value is going to be the same no matter what. That's been studied too. I want to eat it raw.
Yeah, I would agree. And the same thing goes for meats. A lot of people, it's very popular to eat raw meats. I even tried that a couple of times years ago with bacon. And the problem is there's too many sources of infections, even with meats, even with worms, even with bacon. So be very, very careful about eating raw meat or raw eggs or any
Yeah.
animal product.
I remember on my microbiology classes, I'll never forget this. I think that's the only thing that I remember clearly from those classes. The teacher said, I never eat my steak raw because of, I don't know if the pronunciation is correct, cysticercosis.
Mm-hmm.
It's a parasite that can go from your gut to your brain, be there, and cause a ton of issues. So I always got my steak really well cooked. Sure, Smith, eggs are the fast food of the healthy world. Yeah, well, those are easy to get. Unless there's some crisis, they're usually cheap. When I feel lightheaded, I increase my sodium intake. Yeah, that's a good option. Might be blood pressure, not just blood glucose. Brad, my health insurance changed. They will not kick in for CGM because I'm not on insulin. Yeah. The system is broken. Yeah. Dexcom is working on a over the counter, but I don't know how far they have gone in there.
I've never had an insurance company pay for my CGM.
Yeah. Brad, eggs are my staple food. Glad to hear that. Take ADSR. Nick Norwest, I think, presented a recent paper showing cholesterol from diet reduce the body's cholesterol production. Yes, and we didn't go too deep into that because that's evidence that's out there already. Like, it's clear that dietary cholesterol doesn't impact or doesn't increase blood cholesterol. Actually, might even decrease it. And we're familiar with Nick. We had him on the show multiple times by now. We are very fans. We're big fans of his work. Anthony Garcia, I usually cook with bacon fat to increase my saturated fat intake with my eggs for years. My biomarkers have improved. I do the same thing. I'm just trying to find the best bacon source. Soft yolk eggs, of course. And Ricky
That's
the
over
Gun.
easy.
That's over. Oh,
So
thank you
he's
for
talking about
explaining
when you
that for me.
fry them and you keep the yolk soft.
Thank you so much. I recently saw a podcast where Dr. Lustig implied that fructose consumption wouldn't register on a CGM since it only measures glucose. That's correct. We agree with that. Actually, the big problem with fructose is fatty liver. That's why Dr. Lustig is so high on avoiding fructose. And the backlash is a lot of people are saying, well, fruits are safe. I'm going to give you a spoiler from our latest video if you haven't seen it, the worst meal that clogs your arteries. Oranges, raw oranges, have been associated with fatty liver too. So we're not saying don't eat fruit. We're saying be careful of which fruits you eat and how much. That's the whole point. And avoid processed, high serum, I always struggle with that. High fructose syrup?
Corn syrup.
Corn syrup.
High fructose corn syrup. It was invented, what?
I'm going to write it dozens of
40
times.
or 50 years ago, and then it became like the fructose is addictive. I mean, it hits places in the nucleus accumbens that other places, other sugars don't hit. It's bad news. Really, really bad news. And guess what? It tastes sweeter than other sugars. So guess what? It's really easy to access. Guess what? It's just it is one of the favorite additives to processed foods for big food. If they can look for a reason to put high fructose corn syrup in that food, they'll do it. And it will addict you.
Plus all the emulsifiers and cleaning agents and all that stuff. Anyhow, I'm digressing. Fort Worth West Side. We miss you, Fort. Haven't been here in a while. Wanted to say hello. Welcome back. It's a different thing that what you will see now compared to where we were in the past. Dr. Brewer, I don't know what you think. I think this is a good time to stop. You are on vacation. People might not be aware of that. So any closing remarks for today's show?
You know what my closing remark always is?
Well, you need a better one.
Thank you for your interest. Well, you're the new content manager, so you'll have to come up with a better one.
Yeah, I don't know which one we're going to use just yet, but we'll see you next week, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.